Hang on, Mr. Douglas. Yeah.
Ha! We return! Welcome back. This time around, 2 excerpts from Chapter 6 of Ingo Swann's Secrets of Power, Volume 1, where Ingo begins to discuss. In this chapter, Ingo introduces the fact that there are no power schools and how societal power wants it to be that way, and how any time there was an attempt, it is met with severe resistance and punishment. And yet, we are still here. So in this first excerpt, Ingo references specifically Alfred Adler, who in the early 1900s started his own brand of psychology called individual psychology, making some incredibly salient points having to do with personal depowerment and personal empowerment when it comes to impositions upon someone's early childhood life from their socio-cultural surroundings. Let's have a listen. There are many horror stories having to do with the deconstruction of such fated empowerment efforts, but one of those efforts is quite significant precisely because it directly involved making the powerless more powerful. Early in the 20th century, various efforts grouped together as power psychology got going in Europe. One of the chief exponents was Alfred Adler, 1870 to 1937, who founded the school of individual psychology. Adler was among the first to reject the Freudian emphasis upon sex. He maintained that all personality difficulties have their roots in feelings of inferiority, powerlessness, derived from physical, intellectual, or from conflict with the natural and social environment that restricts an individual's need for power and self-assertion. In Adler's terms, feelings of inferiority, diminished power, were the opposites of feelings of superiority, enhanced power. Adler thus saw behavior disorders as overcompensation for power deficiencies and socio-environmental depowerment. So Adler, along with some others in Europe in the early 1900s, started getting going with helping people out, helping individuals out, sort themselves out, with his brand of individual psychology. And his premise, which, hey, I think we see a lot of this now, was that it was inferiority, sensations, perceptions of personal inferiority. It was this self-defining by way of early childhood experiences, environmental socioeconomic situations that people found themselves in, that translated into sensations of diminished power. And those sensations of inferiority or diminished power would make them act out in ways to try to overcompensate. Conversely, those with feelings of, and let's take away any judgment here, superiority or enhanced power, weren't acting out so hard, and certainly not in the kind of overcompensating ways that seem destructive to society's makeup, like those acting out by way of overcompensating for inferiority. I've had my coffee, if you can't tell if I'm talking a little too fast. But I do find this really interesting because I think, especially today, there are a lot of individuals that feel adrift. It is difficult to hold on to something that doesn't seem compromised in one way or another. How does one define themselves and shape themselves in an environment that is, in my personal opinion, being revealed as more and more malignant to the individual and the individual's opportunity to grow in a beneficial, generative way that can then help everybody else out? It's hard to hold on. Not to say that there aren't places and spaces that are helping us along the way. I actually think we're in a kind of great secondary awakening, and that we are groping like little baby moles through the dirt, eventually finding some sweet tubers to chew on to help us grow in ways that'll help us individually and society as a whole. I think you hanging out here is one of those ways. But today, people's feelings of inferiority, if we are to use this lens to look at current events, must be so intense because the level of detrimental, nasty acting out from all these videos coming out from schools where kids are beating up each other and their teachers behaving in a way like causing property damage. I'll date myself. I was in high school in the early 2000s, and that kind of behavior, you'd be gone. It's over for you. You're out. You're not going to come back. I don't know what's going to happen to you, but you're out. You've broken the social contract. You're an unsafe individual. We can't have you around. You need some kind of reform. And Adler's version of that reform was recognizing that the individual early on took in a frame of reference of themselves that was inferior in definition to them, and that feeling of inferiority produced a perception of powerlessness, which meant you had to overcompensate, according to this person's perspective. And if you flip it and say, you look at someone who's had a pretty intense body injury, right? Somebody's knee got taken out and it never really fully healed. Your body overcompensates for your knees not working in tandem together like they once did. So this kind of discussion of overcompensation due to a seemingly perceived position of inferiority makes a lot of sense. How then to unravel that bundle of inferiority perception and try to level out those mental kneecaps so that they can walk in tandem and work just fine once again. Within the book, Ingo does go on and discuss how very quickly the individual psychology of Adler was shut down and made to seem dumb, made to seem incorrect, worthless, insignificant. Because, of course, anything that's going to help an individual recognize within themselves that they can empower themselves is dangerous to a society where you have, I think it was John D. Rockefeller saying, I don't want a nation of intelligent people. I'm paraphrasing here. I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. That version of society is not benefiting from a version of society where people are waking up and finding within themselves that they are, in fact, powerful. But it's not as if we haven't been trying to wake ourselves and each other up. We've been trying to do it and are doing it. I think we are doing it. The pushback is real. And I actually, humbly believe we're making some great gains here, which is why things feel so disruptive right now. World, hold on. Now moving along to Excerpt 2, this one's a little bit longer, but it reiterates the point that you have these startup movements from individual philosophers looking to help out individuals wake themselves up to the fact that we are powerful. And they get stifled pretty quick by society and the machine that runs it, because that's not going to help that machine keep machining on. Individuals waking up to their own power will certainly gunk up the gears. And Ingo is awesome in steeping us in this information so that our frames of reference, our mental models, our maps grow in size, scope, and defog to the situation in which we find ourselves in. The situation is, that old saying I think applies here, the revolution will not be televised. We're not going to get accurate information more often than not from the mainstream. And here in this second excerpt, Ingo presents a reference from the Encyclopedia of Philosophy and how in this encyclopedia they go over all sorts of stuff except for one thing. Because that one thing, they do. They cover their bases, basically. Because that one thing, and you can guess what it is, more knowledge, more sustenance on this particular topic does not assist the machine in moving the way it wants to, and suppressing the very thing that it has been in large part designed to suppress. Here we go. Human history is full of narratives of many past philosophers who undertook such analysis, which turned out unfavorable, and those philosophers swiftly met with bad ends. So, philosophers decidedly belong among the others that the powerful have control, authority, and influence over. And indeed, it would be logical that the workings of power structures must obtain control and authority over anything that is mind-influencing, such as philosophy. It is thus that philosophy, in its purest and ideal sense, must not only be perpetual, but of serious concern to power structures, with the result that smart philosophers have long understood that frank philosophical discussions of power as such are not only taboo, but can be dangerous. And so, there is almost a complete absence of philosophical studies regarding power. And what does exist along such lines usually does not constitute a study based in logical reasoning, but merely a note about the visible aspects of power. For example, in 1967, Macmillan Incorporated, a major publisher to be sure, brought out the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, a tremendous work many years in preparation. It consisted of 8 volumes, altogether amounting to just over 2,120 oversized pages. Every conceivable philosophical topic and philosopher was given lengthy write-ups in it. In this comprehensive compilation, the topic of power could not be avoided altogether, so the entry for it consists of only 2.5 pages, the short length of which is surely indecent for a topic which is otherwise of such enormous importance. The entry tells not much more than a streetwise individual will already know about power. It more or less concluded that to possess power or to be powerful is, then, to have a generalized potentiality for getting one's own way, or for bringing about changes, at least some of which are intended in other people's actions. Well, what has been quoted above surely reflects what the powerful wish to be openly known and accepted about power, and the compilers of the encyclopedia did their duty. Yes, the revolution will not be televised. But maybe you'll get some clips of it on YouTube, who knows, before they take it down. But this is where we're at. Okay. Hey, accept the reality in which we find ourselves so that we can then more accurately shape it the way we'd like it to be. Understand, you're only going to get 2.5 pages in a massive encyclopedia of philosophy about power, because that is the way it most assuredly helps the machine move the way it is supposed to. But there's plenty of access now, especially now, to information that can help us make our own machines and make them modular so that we can connect them up and join them and make a bigger machine. And then when the one piece doesn't fit anymore, we can go, okay, that's fine. We don't need it. We take another piece, put it back in, make it even better. We're here. We're at this point, and we're doing it. One more thing. I do recall that there seems to be a lot of really interesting overlap between Ingo Swann's discussions of power here, individual empowerment power, with Wilhelm Reich's discussion of orgone energy and his character analysis style of psychoanalysis, which then also connects right with Alfred Adler's individual psychology, the idea that there's a lot of childhood experience that happens, and if there's suppression during childhood of a particular point of view, a particular release of energy, especially emotional energy, that will twist and warp and put people's perspectives in some kind of sense of inferiority or powerlessness. And so you got a lot of complexes that come about because of that suppression. So Wilhelm Reich is yet another individual coming at this very same information, like Ingo Swann, like Alfred Adler. So I just find it really cool that there are plenty of sources for us to come to recognize this information. Wilhelm Reich, Alfred Adler, Ingo Swann, they're all talking about personal empowerment and the dangers that suppression from our environmental and societal setups can cause and inflict damage not only on the individual but on society as a whole. We must be free to explore, discover, and go through that process of learning about self. Now, the discussion overall within this chapter is all about the lack of power schools and how we have a setup in society that will do anything but educate individuals on the facts of power within and around ourselves in the world that we live in. What would a world look like if there was a school you could go to educate yourself on the power naturally residing within you, how to cultivate it, how to expand it, how to understand it, and then how to share it, execute it in the world at large. That would be a completely different world. And I think there may be some major bumps in the road, but I think we're on the road to getting there. I really do. Financial education is increasing out of necessity, where we're asking the questions, what is fiat-based currency versus energy-based currency, intrinsic value-based currency? We are right here having a discussion about what is power. Not the easiest way to begin a small talk discussion in the elevator. Hey, what do you think power is? But I would argue asking that question among your friends and family and just chilling, sitting back. Ingo actually recommends this as one of his activities. Go ahead. Ask them, what do you think power is? What a weird question that is. What are you asking me about? Well, take a moment, find it interesting that they react in such a kind of pushback way. Well, might not feel so powerful. Might not have a lot of direct experience feeling powerful, which is why they react in such antagonism. But I think it is an interesting question to ask, and to simply listen to the answers given. What do individuals think power is? Is it naturally inborn, or is it something outside themselves in which to glom upon and try to accumulate? Is it both? Is it something else entirely? I think, among many things, knowledge is power. Awareness is power. And the more awareness we have of the knowledge about power, the more we awaken ourselves to the power latent within us all. Well, if you've got some itchy fingers and you're by a keyboard, definitely visit ingoswann.com, ingoswann.com. Great website. Check it out. And soon, very soon, join me on the official journey, where I narrate to you Volume 1 of Ingo Swann's Secrets of Power. Until then, or at least the next episode here, thanks for hanging. I'll catch you on the next one.